Picture this. You're 6 months pregnant, homeless, and your psychopath ex-husband is stalking you through snowy Chicago streets in pure desperation. You grab a random stranger and beg him to pretend he's your boyfriend. What you don't know, he's a billionaire who's about to turn your nightmare into the fight of your life. But here's the twist that'll blow your mind. Everything you think you know about who's the victim and who's the predator is about to get flipped upside down. This isn't just another love story. This is a psychological thriller where one Facebook live stream destroys a criminal empire and proves that sometimes the most dangerous prisons look exactly like safety. Hit that like button if you're ready for the story that'll keep you guessing until the very last word. And don't forget to subscribe because trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Snow swirled through the streets of downtown Chicago like angry ghosts, and Sarah Collins pulled her threadbare coat tighter around her swollen belly. 6 months pregnant and working a double shift at Murphy's Diner. She should have been home hours ago, but rent was due tomorrow, and her tips from the lunch rush barely covered groceries. The diner's neon sign flickered as she stepped outside, casting eerie shadows on the empty sidewalk. Sarah fumbled for her phone to call a rideshare, knowing she couldn't afford it but unable to walk 12 blocks in this weather. Her fingers were numb, making it hard to navigate the app. That's when she heard the voice that made her blood freeze. There she is, my beautiful wife. Derek Morrison stepped out from behind a parked car, his smile sharp as broken glass. Even in the dim streetlight, Sarah could see he'd been drinking. His expensive coat and designer shoes looked out of place on this working-class street, but Derek had always been good at playing dress-up. "I'm not your wife anymore," Sarah said, backing toward the diner's entrance. "The divorce was finalized 3 months ago." Derek laughed, a sound that used to make her heart flutter but now made her stomach churn. "Paperwork, sweetheart. Just paperwork. You can't erase what we had that easily. What we had was toxic." Sarah's hand found the door handle behind her. "And I'm not going back to that." His expression darkened. "You think you have a choice, you're carrying my child. Sarah, that makes you mine whether you like it or not." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd moved 3 times in the past 6 months, changed her phone number twice. But Derek always found her. His family's money bought him information, lawyers, and the kind of connections that made her feel like a mouse being stalked by a very patient cat. "I need to go," she whispered, pushing the door open. Derek's hand slammed against the glass, holding it shut. "We're not done talking." The diner was empty except for Janet Riley, the night manager, who looked up from counting the register. Janet had become like a mother to Sarah, protecting her from difficult customers and covering for her when morning sickness hit. "Everything okay out there, honey?" Janet called. Derek's smile returned, all charm and false warmth. "Just catching up with my ex-wife. Nothing to worry about." But Sarah saw the rage simmering beneath his polite facade. She'd learned to read the warning signs during their 2-year marriage. The way his jaw tightened, how his fingers curled into fists when he thought no one was looking. The careful modulation of his voice that meant violence was seconds away. "I'm calling the police," Janet said, reaching for the phone. "That won't be necessary," Derek replied smoothly. "Sarah and I just need to have a private conversation about our future." "We don't have a future," Sarah said, louder than she'd intended. "Leave me alone. Derek, please." For a moment, his mask slipped completely. The man who'd once promised to love and protect her showed his true face cold, calculating, and utterly without mercy. "You can run all you want," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "But you can't hide forever. And when I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd never left me." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the swirling snow like he'd never been there at all. But Sarah knew this was far from over. Derek Morrison never gave up on anything he considered his property. And in his twisted mind, she and their unborn child belonged to him forever. 20 minutes later, Sarah stood at the bus stop, still shaking from her encounter with Derek. The last bus had already gone, and her rideshare app showed no available drivers in the storm. Janet had offered to drive her home, but Sarah couldn't ask her boss to venture out in this weather. She pulled out her phone to call a taxi company when she noticed a black sedan idling across the street. Her stomach dropped. Derek's car. He was watching, waiting to follow her home. Again. Panic rose in her throat. She couldn't lead him back to her apartment. Mrs. Chen, her elderly landlord, had already complained about strange men asking questions about Sarah. One more incident and she'd be evicted. The sedan's door opened. Without thinking, Sarah bolted down the sidewalk, her feet slipping on the icy concrete. Behind her, she heard Derek's voice calling her name, no longer bothering with pretense. "Sarah, get back here." She rounded the corner onto Michigan Avenue, where late-night shoppers and restaurant patrons provided some safety in numbers. But her pregnancy made running impossible, and Derek's longer legs were closing the distance fast. Desperation made her reckless. A tall man in an expensive overcoat stood outside a high-end steakhouse, talking on his phone. Without hesitation, Sarah threw herself against him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Please," she gasped, looking up into startled dark eyes. "Pretend you know me. Just for a minute." Marcus Hartwell had been discussing quarterly projections with his CFO when a pregnant woman collided with his chest. His first instinct was to steady her, but the terror in her green eyes made him forget about business entirely. "Are you hurt?" he asked, pocketing his phone. Before Sarah could answer, Derek appeared, his face flushed with anger and exertion. "Step away from my wife, buddy. This is a private matter." Marcus felt Sarah tremble against him. Whatever was happening here, this woman was genuinely afraid. He'd built his tech empire by trusting his instincts, and every alarm bell in his head was screaming danger. "She doesn't look like she wants to go with you," Marcus said calmly, keeping his arm around Sarah's shoulders. Derek's eyes narrowed as he studied Marcus more carefully. Recognition dawned slowly. "You're Marcus Hartwell, from the Forbes cover last month." Marcus didn't respond, but his silence was answer enough. "This is rich," Derek laughed bitterly. "My gold-digging ex-wife managed to snag a billionaire. How much is she asking for?" "Marcus, whatever it is, she's not worth it." "Watch your mouth," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a dangerous level that made his board members nervous and his competitors reconsider hostile takeovers. Derek raised his hands in mock surrender. "Hey, I'm just trying to save you from making an expensive mistake. Sarah here has a talent for playing the victim. Don't let her sob story fool you." Sarah pulled away from Marcus, her face burning with humiliation. "I never asked you for anything, Derek, and I'm not asking him for anything either." "Right," Derek smirked. "You just happened to bump into Chicago's most eligible bachelor. What a coincidence." The doubt in Marcus's eyes was subtle, but Sarah caught it. Of course he'd wonder about her motives. Why wouldn't he? She was nothing a pregnant waitress with nowhere to go and no one to help her. "I should go," she whispered, stepping back from both men. But Derek moved to block her path. "We're not finished, Sarah." That's when Marcus stepped between them, and Sarah realized she'd accidentally recruited a protector who might be more dangerous than her ex-husband. The next morning, Sarah woke to her phone buzzing like an angry wasp. Text after text flooded her screen, most from numbers she didn't recognize. Confused and groggy, she opened the first message. "Saw you on Instagram. Disgusting gold digger." Her blood turned to ice. With trembling fingers, she opened the Instagram app and searched for Derek's profile. What she found made her stomach lurch. He'd posted a photo of her embracing Marcus outside the restaurant, taken from across the street. The image was blurry but unmistakable, and Derek's caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. "When your ex-wife gets pregnant and immediately starts hunting billionaires, Sarah Collins everyone went from waitress to predator in 9 months. Feel sorry for the baby." The post already had thousands of likes and hundreds of comments, each one more vicious than the last. Sarah scrolled through them with growing horror. She's probably not even pregnant, just wearing a fake belly. Poor guy has no idea what he's getting into. This is why rich men need prenups. That baby could be anyone's. Sarah ran to the bathroom and threw up. Though whether from morning sickness or pure humiliation, she couldn't tell. When she emerged, her phone showed 47 missed calls and over 200 text messages. She called in sick to work, knowing she couldn't face customers who might have seen the post. But by noon, even that sanctuary was compromised. Janet called with news that made Sarah's world crumble further. "Honey, I'm so sorry," Janet said, her voice heavy with regret. "Corporate saw the post. They're worried about the diner's reputation. I fought for you, but I'm fired, Sarah finished hollowly. It's temporary, Janet insisted. Once this blows over, it won't blow over, Sarah interrupted. Derek made sure of that. After hanging up, she sat in her tiny studio apartment and stared at the eviction notice that had been slipped under her door while she slept. Final warning, 3 days to pay or get out. Her phone rang, an unknown number. Sarah Collins. The voice was professionally cold. This is Amanda Pierce from Channel 7 News. We'd like to interview you about your relationship with Marcus Hartwell. We're prepared to offer. Sarah hung up and turned off her phone, but the damage was spreading beyond her control. Derek's post had been shared to Reddit, Twitter, and TikTok. Strangers dissected her life with surgical precision, finding her old social media posts and twisting innocent photos into evidence of her supposed schemes. By evening, she was trending on Twitter under the hashtag pregnant predator. A knock at her door made her freeze. Through the peephole, she saw a man in an expensive suit holding a briefcase. Miss Collins, I'm Robert Kane, attorney for Marcus Hartwell. He'd like to speak with you. Sarah's heart sank. Of course Marcus wanted to distance himself from this scandal. She'd destroyed his reputation in one night of desperation. Tell him I'm sorry, she called through the door. I never meant for any of this to happen. Miss Collins, you misunderstand. Mr. Hartwell isn't angry. He's concerned about your safety. Against her better judgment, Sarah opened the door. The lawyer was younger than she'd expected, with kind eyes that reminded her of her father. May I come in? She nodded, too exhausted to argue. Mr. Hartwell has been monitoring the situation, Robert explained as he settled into her only chair. He's seen the harassment you're receiving, the death threats. Death threats? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Robert pulled out his phone and showed her screenshots. Messages from anonymous accounts promising to teach her a lesson and make her pay for being a leech. Someone had posted her address with an invitation for patriots to defend billionaires from parasites. Oh God, Sarah breathed. Mr. Hartwell would like to offer you his protection. Robert continued. Temporarily, until this subsides. Sarah almost laughed at the absurdity. He wants to help the woman who ruined his reputation. He wants to help someone who's being unjustly persecuted, Robert corrected. And he has resources to fight back against false narratives. For a moment, hope flickered in Sarah's chest. Then reality crashed back down. I can't accept charity from him. That would only make everything worse. Robert leaned forward. What if it wasn't charity? What if it was employment? The first engagement point hit as Sarah faced an impossible choice that millions understand: accept help and risk being judged, or maintain pride and possibly lose everything. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly, where her daughter kicked softly, reminding her that pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. The job offer was almost too good to be true: administrative assistant at Hartwell Technologies. Health insurance included. Salary 3 times what she'd made at the diner. Marcus had even arranged temporary housing in a company apartment until she found her own place. Sarah signed the contract with shaking hands, knowing she had no choice but to trust a man she'd known for less than 24 hours. The apartment was a revelation. Clean white walls, functioning heat, a refrigerator that actually kept food cold for the first time in months. Sarah slept through the night without worrying about rent or safety. But the internet never sleeps, and Derek's campaign against her only intensified. New posts appeared daily, each one more creative in its cruelty. He'd somehow obtained photos of her new apartment building and posted them with captions about landing the jackpot and upgrading her lifestyle. Worse, he'd started a podcast called Gold Digger Diaries, where he analyzed Sarah's techniques with the expertise of a predator teaching other predators. The episodes were downloaded thousands of times, turning her humiliation into entertainment. At Hartwell Technologies, Sarah tried to blend into the background, but whispers followed her everywhere. Employees speculated about her relationship with Marcus in elevators and break rooms, their voices dropping when she appeared. The only bright spot was her work. Marcus had given her real responsibilities, organizing his calendar, managing correspondence, even sitting in on some meetings. For the first time since leaving Derek, she felt useful, competent, valued. Marcus himself remained professionally distant but unfailingly kind. He never mentioned the scandal, never made her feel like a burden or charity case. When paparazzi camped outside the building, he had security escort her through a private entrance. When a reporter ambushed her at a doctor's appointment, his legal team sent a cease and desist letter within hours. 3 weeks into her new life, Sarah finally felt like she might survive this storm. Then Derek played his next card. She was leaving the office on a Friday evening when she found him waiting by her car in the parking garage. Her new keychain equipped with a panic button that would summon building security was in her purse. But Derek was already too close. "You look good, sweetheart," he said, circling her like a shark. "Pregnancy suits you. Almost makes me forget why I left." "Stay away from me, Derek." Sarah backed toward the elevator, but he matched her step for step. "Relax, I'm not here to cause trouble. I have a proposition. I'm not interested. You haven't heard it yet." His smile was all teeth and no warmth. "I want what's best for our daughter." Sarah's hand went protectively to her belly. "Don't you dare pretend to care about her." "Of course I care. She's my blood, my legacy. That's why I'm willing to make a deal." Despite every instinct screaming at her to run, Sarah found herself listening. Derek had always been persuasive when he wanted something. "Drop the restraining order requests," he continued. "Stop playing victim, and I'll disappear from your life forever. You can play house with your billionaire, and I'll never bother you again." "What's the catch?" Derek's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the predator beneath. "Sign over your parental rights. Let me adopt our daughter out to a nice family. She deserves better than a mother who can't provide for her." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "You want me to give up my baby?" "I want what's best for her," Derek repeated. "You're unstable, Sarah. No job history, no family support, no money of your own. What kind of life can you offer her?" "I'm not giving up my daughter." "Think about it," Derek said, backing away now that he'd delivered his poison. "Really think about what's best for her. You have 72 hours to decide." As he walked away, Sarah collapsed against her car, Derek's words echoing in her mind. Was he right? Was she being selfish, clinging to a child she might not be able to provide for that night? She stood in her borrowed apartment, looking out at the city lights, and wondered if love was enough when the world seemed determined to tear them apart. Her daughter kicked, and Sarah placed both hands on her belly. "I won't let him take you," she whispered, "no matter what it costs me." But deep down, she wondered if she was making a promise she couldn't keep. Sarah's phone buzzed at 2 a.m. with a text from an unknown number. "Check your door." Heart pounding, she crept to the peephole and saw an envelope on the floor. Inside were photographs that made her blood run cold. Images of her entering and leaving the apartment building, getting into Marcus's company car, eating lunch at the building's cafe. Someone had been watching her for days. A note was paperclipped to the photos. "Thought you should know how easy it would be to find you. The offer expires at midnight tomorrow. Don't make me get creative." The threat was clear. Derek wasn't just asking her to sign away her parental rights. He was promising to make her life hell if she refused. Sarah didn't sleep for the rest of the night. She showed up to work hollow-eyed and jumpy, flinching every time someone approached her desk. Marcus noticed immediately. "Are you feeling all right?" he asked during their morning briefing. Sarah wanted to tell him everything, but Derek's photos had reminded her how exposed she was. Anyone could be watching. Anyone could be reporting back to her ex-husband. "Just tired," she lied. But Marcus wasn't fooled. That afternoon, he called her into his office and closed the door. "Sarah, I know we haven't known each other long, but I'm a good judge of character. You're scared, and it's not just about internet trolls." The kindness in his voice almost broke her resolve. She'd been alone for so long that having someone notice her fear felt like a lifeline. "Derek wants me to sign over parental rights," she admitted. "He says he'll leave me alone if I give up the baby." Marcus's expression darkened. "And if you refuse?" "He's made it clear that's not an option." "Sarah, look at me." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. "You don't have to face this alone. I have resources, security, lawyers." "Why?" The question burst out of her before she could stop it. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah thought she'd overstepped. Then he moved closer. close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes. Because you're brave, he said simply, and because someone should fight for you, even if it's not the father of your child. Sarah's heart stuttered. The way he looked at her made her feel beautiful, valuable, protected. For a moment, she let herself imagine what it would be like to have someone like Marcus in her life permanently. I can't let you get more involved in this mess, she whispered. I'm already involved, Marcus replied. The question is whether you trust me enough to let me help. Before Sarah could answer, both their phones buzzed simultaneously. Marcus pulled out his device and his face went white. What is it? Sarah asked. He turned the screen toward her. TMZ had posted a video with the headline, Pregnant Gold Digger Caught Dealing Drugs to Billionaire's Employees. The footage was grainy but clear enough to show Sarah in the building's parking garage, handing a small package to someone whose face was obscured. The timestamp showed yesterday evening, right after her conversation with Derek. That's not me, Sarah said frantically. I mean, it's me, but I was just returning Janet's Tupperware container. She'd left soup for me at the diner, and I believe you, Marcus said, but she could see the doubt in his eyes. The timing was too convenient, the optics too damaging. Within an hour, the story had exploded across social media. Hashtag drug dealing, mom trended on Twitter. The security footage had been leaked to every major news outlet. Sarah's face was on CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all asking the same question: was Chicago's most eligible bachelor being manipulated by a pregnant drug dealer? Marcus's board demanded an emergency meeting. His stock price dropped 3 points. Protesters gathered outside the building with signs reading, "Fire the criminal and protect our children." That evening, as Sarah packed her belongings with shaking hands, Marcus appeared in her doorway. Where are you going? He asked. I can't stay here, Sarah said without looking at him. I'm destroying your life. The evidence is fabricated. Can you prove that? Marcus was silent, and his silence was answer enough. I appreciate everything you've done for me, Sarah continued, folding her meager clothes into a garbage bag. But this has to end. I won't let Derek destroy you too. Sarah, please, let me fix this. She finally looked at him, memorizing his face because she knew she'd never see him again. Some things can't be fixed. Marcus, some people are just toxic, and everything they touch turns to poison. As she walked away from the only place she'd felt safe in months, Sarah felt her heart break for the second time in her life. But this time, she was the one walking away, protecting the man she was falling in love with from the mess that was her existence. Derek had won, again. Sarah's savings lasted exactly 11 days. The cheap motel on the outskirts of Chicago smelled like bleach and desperation, and even that was beyond her budget now. The manager had been kind enough to let her stay an extra night, but tomorrow she'd be on the street. 7 months pregnant, unemployed, and infamous. She sat on the stained bedspread and stared at the blank wall. Her phone had been disconnected for non-payment. Her bank account showed negative $37. The baby inside her kicked restlessly, as if sensing her mother's despair. A knock at the door made her jump. Through the thin wood, she heard Derek's voice. Open up, sweetheart. We need to talk. Sarah considered not answering, but there was nowhere to run. She was trapped in a 12 by 12 room with no escape route. What do you want? She called out. To help you. Open the door. Against her better judgment, she unlocked the chain. Derek stepped inside, his expensive cologne clashing with the motel's musty air. He looked around the room with exaggerated sympathy. This is what independence gets you, he said sadly. I tried to warn you. Did you come here to gloat? I came to offer you a solution. Derek sat on the room's only chair, making himself comfortable. I've been thinking about our conversation. You're right, adoption isn't the answer. Our daughter should stay in the family. Sarah's heart leaped despite herself. You want to work out custody. Better than that. I want to give our marriage another chance. The words hit her like a slap. You're insane. Look around, Sarah. This is rock bottom. Your billionaire boyfriend threw you away the moment things got complicated. Your boss fired you. Strangers want to hurt you. But I'm still here. Derek stood and moved closer, his voice dropping to the intimate tone he'd once used to seduce her. I know I made mistakes. I was young, scared, stupid, but I've learned from them. We could start over. Do it right this time. You left me for another woman. Claire was a phase, a midlife crisis I'm already over. She doesn't understand me the way you do. Sarah backed toward the bathroom, her only escape route. I'll never go back to you, never. Derek's mask slipped, revealing the anger beneath. Your pride is going to destroy that baby. Look at yourself. Sarah, you're homeless, broke, alone. How long before child services decides you're unfit? How long before they take her away from both of us? The threat was barely veiled. Derek had connections in the legal system, money to hire investigators and social workers. If he wanted to paint her as an unfit mother, he could make it happen. Think about what's best for her, Ma, Derek continued, sensing her weakness. I can give her everything: private schools, health care, a stable home. What can you offer her? A motel room and food stamps. Sarah's hand moved protectively to her belly. Her daughter deserved better than this, deserved a life of opportunity and security. But she also deserved a mother who would fight for her, not surrender her to a man who saw children as possessions. I need time to think, Sarah whispered. Derek smiled, knowing he'd planted the seed of doubt. Of course, but don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't last forever. After he left, Sarah curled up on the bed and sobbed until no more tears would come. She was out of options, out of hope, out of fight. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe her love wasn't enough. The second engagement point hit as Sarah faced the universal fear every parent knows: am I enough for my child? The question that haunts mothers in mansions and homeless shelters alike. The doubt that makes love feel selfish when security seems impossible. Through the thin walls, she could hear a baby crying in the next room, and Sarah wondered if that would be her daughter's future tears in a place like this, with a mother too proud to accept help from the only person offering it. As she drifted into exhausted sleep, Sarah dreamed of Marcus's kind eyes and wondered if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life by walking away from the only man who'd ever made her feel worthy of protection. But when she woke up, Derek was back, and this time he hadn't come alone. Sarah jerked awake to voices outside her door. Derek was talking to someone in hushed tones, but she caught fragments. Not safe for the baby. And documented history of instability. Hard hammering. She crept to the window and peered through the grimy curtain. Two women in business attire stood with Derek, clipboards in hand. One was photographing the motel's exterior while the other took notes. Child Protective Services. Sarah's blood turned to ice. Derek wasn't just threatening to take her baby anymore, he was actually doing it. She grabbed her phone, remembered it was disconnected, then looked around frantically for another option. The motel phone was broken, hanging uselessly from the nightstand. No way to call for help, no way to contact a lawyer, no way to even reach Marcus. The knock came 3 minutes later, sharp, official, uncompromising. Miss Collins, this is Linda Martinez from Child Protective Services. We need to speak with you. Sarah pressed her back against the door, panic flooding her system. If she let them in, they'd see the squalid conditions, smell the mold and desperation. But if she didn't cooperate, they'd assume she was hiding something worse. Can I see some identification? She called out. Papers slid under the door: official badges, court orders, Derek's carefully constructed evidence of her instability, photos of her crying outside the courthouse, screenshots of her viral social media humiliation, financial records showing her unemployment and eviction notices. We're here for a wellness check, Linda Martinez said through the door. Your ex-husband expressed concerns about the baby's safety. I'm fine, Sarah said, but her voice cracked. The baby's fine. We still need to speak with you in person. Miss Collins, please open the door. Sarah had no choice. She unlocked the chain and faced two women whose expressions were professionally neutral, but whose eyes held judgment. Behind them, Derek stood with fake concern plastered across his face. Sarah, thank God, Midi said, pushing past the social workers. When I heard about this place, I had to call someone. You can't live like this. Linda Martinez stepped into the room and surveyed the water-stained ceiling, the broken heater, the mold creeping up the bathroom walls. Her partner opened a thick folder and began documenting everything. Miss Collins, how long have you been staying here? Linda asked. Just temporarily, Sarah said, hating how defensive she sounded. I'm looking for something permanent. Have you been receiving prenatal care? Yes, Sarah stopped. She'd missed her last two appointments because she couldn't afford the copays. The social worker would find out anyway. I've been worried sick about her, Derek interjected smoothly. Sarah's always been impulsive, but since the pregnancy, she's been making increasingly dangerous decisions. The drug dealing allegations, the homelessness. Those allegations were false, Sarah protested. Were they investigated by police? Linda asked. Sarah's silence was answer enough. Marcus's lawyers had advised against pressing charges, saying it would only generate more negative publicity. I want what's best for Sarah and the baby. Derek continued. I've consulted with my attorney about emergency custody measures if necessary. The room spun around Sarah. Emergency custody meant they could take her baby the moment she was born, place her in Derek's care while Sarah fought a legal battle she couldn't afford. That won't be necessary if Miss Collins agrees to accept appropriate support, Linda said diplomatically. Housing assistance, prenatal care, parenting classes. I can provide all of that, Derek said. We're still married in the eyes of God, and I take my responsibilities seriously. We're divorced, Sarah whispered, but nobody was listening to her anymore. The social workers spent an hour documenting everything: the broken lock on the bathroom door, the cigarette burns in the carpet, the suspicious stains on the bed sheets. With each photo, each note, Sarah felt her chances of keeping her daughter slipping away. We'll be in touch within 48 hours, Linda said as they prepared to leave. In the meantime, Miss Collins, I strongly suggest you consider your housing situation. The state has an obligation to protect unborn children. After they left, Derek lingered, savoring his victory. This doesn't have to be difficult, he said gently. Come home with me tonight. Let me take care of you both. Sarah stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time how thoroughly he'd orchestrated this moment. The social media campaign, the drug allegations, even her financial ruin, all of it had been designed to lead to this choice: submit or lose everything. If I go with you, she said slowly. What happens to me? Derek's smile was all warmth and no heat. You get to be a mother. Isn't that what you wanted? But Sarah heard the unspoken truth. She'd be a mother under his control, in his house, under his rules, a prisoner with a baby-shaped chain around her ankle. I need to think, she said. Don't think too long, Derek warned. Social services tends to act quickly when children are at risk. As he walked away, Sarah collapsed on the bed and finally understood the full scope of Derek's plan. He didn't just want their daughter, he wanted to own Sarah completely, to make her so desperate and dependent that she'd never try to leave again. And the terrifying thing was, it was working. Sarah lasted exactly 6 hours before Derek's psychological warfare broke her completely. Sitting in the dark motel room, she calculated her options on the back of a fast food receipt. They all led to the same conclusion: she was going to lose her daughter no matter what she chose. At midnight, she called Derek from the broken motel phone. I'll come with you, she said without preamble. But I have conditions. Derek's pleased chuckle came through the static. You're not really in a position to negotiate, sweetheart. I want my own room, and I want to see a doctor of my choosing for prenatal care. Done. Anything else? Sarah closed her eyes. I want your word that you won't try to take her away from me after she's born. Sarah, we're going to be a family again. Why would I take her away from her mother? The way he said it made her skin crawl, but Sarah was out of options. I'll pack my things. Don't bother. We'll buy you new everything. I'll pick you up in an hour. Derek's house in Lake Forest was exactly as Sarah remembered: imposing, cold, and designed to intimidate. The same marble floors that had once made her feel like a princess now felt like a prison courtyard. Derek showed her to the guest bedroom, her room with the courtesy of a warden housing a cooperative inmate. I've already called Dr. Stevens, he said, lingering in the doorway. He'll see you tomorrow for a complete checkup. Guy Stevens had been Derek's family physician for decades, a man who'd learned long ago not to ask uncomfortable questions about the Morrison family's business. For 3 days, Sarah lived in a gilded cage. Derek was the perfect gentleman, bringing her meals, inquiring about her comfort, playing the role of devoted husband-to-be for an audience of housekeepers and delivery drivers. But Sarah felt his eyes on her constantly, calculating, evaluating, planning. The trap sprung on Thursday evening. Sarah was reading in the library when Derek appeared with 2 cups of tea and an expression she'd learned to fear. "We need to discuss our future, Papa," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "I thought we had. I stay here until the baby's born. Then we figure out custody." Derek laughed softly. "Oh, sweetheart, you still don't understand." He pulled out his phone and showed her a video, security footage from the motel parking lot, showing Sarah getting into Derek's car. The timestamp was from 3 nights ago. "What's this supposed to prove? That you came here voluntarily? That you chose to reunite with me?" Derek swiped to the next video. "This is from yesterday, you and me having dinner, laughing together like old times." Sarah's stomach dropped. The camera angles made their stilted conversations look intimate, her fearful compliance appear willing. "And this," Derek continued, showing her a document on his phone, "is the marriage license I filed this morning. Turns out our divorce had some procedural irregularities, easily corrected with the right lawyers. You can't just remarry me without my consent. I already did. You've been living as my wife for 3 days, accepting my support, using my name with the medical staff. In Illinois, that constitutes common law marriage under certain circumstances." Sarah shot to her feet, tea spilling across the Persian rug. "This isn't. I'm leaving." "To go where?" Derek asked mildly. "The motel kicked you out after you left. Your apartment was rented to someone else. And legally speaking, you can't take my unborn child out of state without my permission." The room spun around Sarah. She'd walked into Derek's web so completely that escape seemed impossible. "Besides," Derek continued, "where's the rush? You're safe here, fed, medically cared for. Isn't this what you wanted when you were crying in that filthy motel room?" Sarah backed toward the door, but Derek's next words froze her in place. "Of course, if you really want to leave, I can't stop you. But I'll have to call Linda Martinez and let her know that my pregnant wife abandoned our home." She seemed very concerned about stability during her last visit. The third engagement point crystallized as Sarah realized the wisdom her grandmother had tried to teach her years ago. Sometimes the most dangerous prisons are the ones that feel like safety. The cage that provides shelter can become the trap that destroys everything you truly value. Sarah understood now that Derek had never wanted their daughter for love. He wanted her as a tool to control Sarah forever. And she finally knew what she had to do. "You're right," she said quietly. "I do need stability." Derek's smile was triumphant. "I knew you'd see reason." But as Sarah walked upstairs to her beautiful prison, she was already planning her escape. Because sometimes the only way to save someone you love is to risk losing them completely. And Sarah was about to risk everything on one desperate gamble that would either free them both or destroy them forever. Sarah waited until 3 a.m. before making her move. She'd spent hours lying in bed, listening to Derek's movements through the house, memorizing his patterns. He always checked on her at midnight and 2 a.m., then went to his study for what he called late-night business calls, moving as quietly as possible. Sarah crept downstairs to Derek's home office. The door was locked, but she remembered where he kept the spare key hidden inside the decorative vase their wedding guests had given them, back when she'd believed in their future. Derek's computer was password protected, but Sarah knew him well enough to guess Morrison 1985, his birth year combined with his family name. Some people never changed. What she found in his email files made her hands shake with rage and vindication. Months of correspondence with private investigators, social media manipulation services, and carefully orchestrated character assassination. But the smoking gun was a thread with someone called Digital Reputation Solutions. The company had created fake social media accounts to spread lies about Sarah, hired actors to pose as concerned citizens, and even staged the drug-dealing video using a body double and clever camera angles. Every humiliation, every viral moment of shame had been manufactured by Derek's money and sociopathic planning. Sarah forwarded everything to her own email, then kept digging. She found financial records showing Derek's mounting debts, his desperate attempts to access his trust fund early, and most damning of all, a life insurance policy he'd taken out on Sarah 3 months ago, a policy that paid double for accidental death. Her blood ran cold as she read the correspondence with his lawyer about tragic accidents and stress-related complications during pregnancy. Derek wasn't just planning to control her, he was planning to eliminate her entirely once the baby was born. Sarah copied every file she could find, her heart hammering so loudly she was sure it would wake the entire house. Just as she finished, She heard footsteps on the stairs. Quickly, she closed the computer and slipped out of the office, making it back to her room seconds before Derek's shadow appeared in the hallway. Through her barely cracked door, she watched him pause outside her room, listening. Then he moved on to his nightly patrol of the house. Sarah waited another hour before implementing the second part of her plan. Using the burner phone she'd bought during her one supervised trip to the grocery store, she called the one person who might still care enough to help her. "Marcus," she whispered when he answered on the first ring. "It's Sarah." "Jesus Christ, Sarah, where are you? I've been looking for you for weeks." The relief in his voice almost made her cry. "I need help. I'm at Derek's house, but it's not what you think. He's... Give me the address. I'm coming to get you." "No, it's too dangerous. He has security cameras, motion sensors. If you show up here, he'll call the police and say you're stalking me." "Then what do you need?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I'm going to send you some files, evidence of everything Derek's done. When I give you the signal, I need you to release them to every media outlet you can think of." "Sarah, what are you planning? Something stupid and dangerous and probably illegal," she admitted. "But it's the only way to end this." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Tell me what you need." For the next 2 hours, they planned every detail. Marcus would monitor the situation from his car parked 3 blocks away. When Sarah gave the signal a text saying now, he would flood social media and news outlets with Derek's confession emails and financial records. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked before they hung up. "Once this starts, there's no going back." "He was going to kill me, Marcus. After the baby was born, he was going to make it look like an accident." The silence on the other end was deafening. "I should have fought harder for you, Marcus said finally. "I should have known you were telling the truth." "You couldn't have known. Derek's very good at manipulation." "Sarah," Marcus's voice was soft, vulnerable. "When this is over, when you're safe, I want to try again. If you'll let me." Sarah's heart clenched. "Ask me again when I'm not a wanted fugitive." "Deal." At dawn, Sarah put her plan into motion. She dressed carefully in the clothes Derek had bought her designer maternity wear that photographed well and went downstairs for breakfast. Derek was already at the table, reading the morning news on his tablet. "Good morning. Beautiful," he said without looking up. "Sleep well." "Very well." Sarah lied. "Derek, I've been thinking about our future." "Oh, I want to make this official. A real wedding, not just paperwork. Something our daughter can be proud of." Derek's smile was radiant. "I was hoping you'd say that. I've already spoken to the country club about dates in December." "Actually," Sarah said, pulling out her phone, "I was thinking we should announce our engagement today. Social media, press releases, the works. Show the world that we're serious about being a family." Derek's eyes lit up with avarice. The Morrison family name attached to a public redemption story would be worth millions in restored reputation and business connections. "Brilliant," he said. "We'll do a photo shoot this afternoon." "Why wait?" Sarah asked, raising her phone. "Let's go live right now. Show everyone how happy we are." Derek didn't hesitate. He moved to sit beside her, wrapping his arm around her shoulders as Sarah started a Facebook live stream. Within minutes, hundreds of viewers had joined, drawn by the promise of drama. "Hi everyone," Sarah said brightly. "Derek and I wanted to share some exciting news about our future together." "That's right," Derek added, his politician's smile perfect for the camera. "We've realized that love conquers all, and we're committed to building a beautiful life for our family." The comments section exploded with reactions, some supportive, others skeptical, many simply curious about the latest twist in Sarah's viral saga. "Derek's been so patient with me," Sarah continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "He's shown me what real love looks like. Haven't you, honey?" "Absolutely, I know I am," Derek said, clearly enjoying the attention. "Sarah just needed time to understand that I'd do anything for her and our daughter. Anything at all." That was Sarah's cue, still smiling for the camera. She said, "Tell everyone about the private investigators. Derek, about how much you spent documenting my every move." Derek's smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. "Sarah, what are you? Or maybe you'd like to explain the fake social media accounts, the ones you used to spread lies about me." The live stream viewer count was climbing rapidly as Derek's face went white. He reached for Sarah's phone, but she pulled it away. "Don't be shy," Sarah said sweetly. "Tell them about digital reputation solutions. Tell them how you hired actors to make me look like a drug dealer." "Sarah, stop this right now." But Sarah was just getting started. "What about the life insurance policy, Derek? The one that pays double if I die in an accident?" Derek lunged for the phone, but Sarah was ready. She sent Marcus the text now, and within seconds, her social media feeds began flooding with Derek's own emails, financial records, and photographic evidence of his conspiracy. The live stream chat went insane as viewers screenshot and shared the evidence in real time. Derek's crimes were spreading across the internet faster than he could possibly contain them. "You bitch," Derek snarled, his mask finally slipping completely. "You have no idea what you've just done." "I've saved my daughter from having a murderer for a father," Sarah replied calmly, still broadcasting. "And I've saved myself from being your next victim." Derek's hand shot out to grab her arm, but Sarah was already moving toward the door. Behind her, she could hear him screaming threats and denials. But it was too late. The truth was out, viral and undeniable. And for the first time in her life, Sarah Collins was finally free. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the kitchen of her new apartment, bouncing her 3-month-old daughter Emma against her shoulder while watching the morning news. Derek's sentencing was the lead story on every channel. Morrison was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder, the anchor reported. His conviction was largely based on digital evidence that went viral during a Facebook live stream that was viewed over 10 million times. Sarah muted the television and looked down at Emma's perfect face. Her daughter had Derek's dark hair, but Sarah's green eyes. And more importantly, she would grow up free from his influence. A soft knock at the door made Sarah smile. She knew that gentle, respectful sound. "Come in, Marcus," she called. "You know you don't have to knock anymore." Marcus entered carrying coffee and pastries from the bakery downstairs, his daily offering during these precious morning visits. He'd been patient through Sarah's recovery, earning her trust slowly and never pushing for more than she was ready to give. "How's my favorite girl today?" he asked, setting down breakfast and reaching for Emma. "She's been asking about you," Sarah said, passing the baby over. "I think she likes your voice." Marcus settled into the rocking chair Sarah had bought with her first paycheck from her new job at a nonprofit organization. Watching him hold her daughter with such natural tenderness still took Sarah's breath away. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked softly, as he did sometimes when the morning light made everything feel possible. Sarah considered the question seriously. The past year had been the hardest of her life, but it had also been the most transformative. She'd learned to fight for herself, to trust her instincts, and to believe she deserved love that lifted her up instead of tearing her down. "About Derek, about the whole nightmare," she shook her head. "Not anymore. It led me here, to her, to you. How could I regret that?" Marcus looked up from Emma's face, his expression soft and hopeful. "Sarah, I know we're taking things slow, and I don't want to rush you, but yes," Sarah interrupted, knowing what he was about to ask. "You don't even know the question." "Ask me anyway." Marcus grinned, the boyish smile that had first made Sarah's heart skip. "Will you marry me? Not because you need saving, not because you're afraid or desperate or running out of options, but because you love me and want to build a life together." Sarah looked around her small apartment, their apartment. Really, since Marcus spent most of his time here now. The walls were covered with Emma's photos, Sarah's nursing school acceptance letter, and Marcus's sketches for the youth center they were planning to build together. "I love you," she said simply. "I love the way you hold my daughter like she's made of glass and steel. I love that you let me fight my own battles but stand ready to catch me if I fall. I love that you see me as strong enough to be your partner, not just someone to rescue. Is that a yes?" Sarah kissed him softly, tasting coffee and possibility and the promise of mornings like this for the rest of their lives. "That's a yes," Emma gurgled happily between them, as if she approved of the arrangement. Later that evening, as Sarah tucked Emma into her crib and Marcus cleaned up the dinner dishes, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The desperate pregnant woman who had thrown herself into a stranger's arms seemed like a different person now, someone she barely recognized. But maybe that was the point. Maybe sometimes you had to lose everything you thought you were in order to discover who you really could be. Derek had tried to destroy her, but instead he'd forged her into someone stronger, someone worthy of the love that now filled her life. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Penny for your thoughts," Marcus said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Just thinking about how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. Even the part where you were homeless and terrified. Especially that part," Sarah said, leaning back against his chest. "Because that's when I learned I could survive anything. And once you know that about yourself, you're never really powerless again." Marcus spun her around to face him, ready for the next adventure. "Mrs. Almost Hartwell." Sarah looked at the man who had seen her at her lowest point and chosen to love her anyway. At the daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room, at the life they were building together, one brave choice at a time. "I'm ready for anything," she said, and for the first time in her life, she truly meant it. Outside, snow began to fall on the Chicago streets, but inside their warm apartment, Sarah Collins had finally found her way home.